always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
My name is Ashley. I am 19 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right, Ashley. So this is where I typically ask everybody, how'd you become one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? And I know that you have a little bit of a unique aspect to that. So how were you introduced to it? What's a little bit of your backstory?
So I was introduced to it through the foster care system. So I was put up for adoption and put into multiple foster care homes. But I think the last one, I think it was the third or fourth one, was the one where she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she would take in foster kids and, house them until they were adopted.
So now, if I remember correctly, and just talking a little pre-interview, you were very young in the system, right?
I was very young. I was, so I think I was not even a year old when I was taken away from my birth mother. And then I was actually hospitalized for a while. So I was in like a hospital/care system because of the situation that I was in. And I then once I got better, I went into like regular foster care systems at home. So I think it was at like, maybe I was like 3. I was really young. It was either 2 or 3. I was into that last home where I was introduced to Jehovah's Witnesses and going to the meetings.
Okay. So you've gone from your birth parents now to this foster home, and so you've got your foster mom, right? And she is the nexus of the introduction to the witnesses, though. I mean, you're 3, so I don't know how much you really, I remember that first meeting and what we talked about, right?
No. Yeah, I just loved being able to wear dresses and go to the meeting, and everyone was so nice. So, and anytime she got a new kid, everyone loved it because everyone loved, like, they took like turns taking care of him, taking care of the kids as well, because they knew the circumstances that they were in. And that's how I met my birth mother, not my birth mother, my adoptive mother. She was one of the people that would, take the foster kids on the weekends, have a little fun with them and, take them to parks and stuff like that. And she did the same thing with me. And, then we would have to go back to the foster home, of course, but, it was nice. That's how I met. And it was like what I mentioned this before. It was like an instant connection with my adoptive mother. She had a husband at the time. They just didn't have any kids. And she was not really thinking about adopting, but it crossed her mind because, she was around it so much. But when she met me, she made the decision that she wanted to adopt me. So.
Oh, that's a lovely story. That's nice. So the foster mother that you met first, what was kind of her situation?
So she was older. I think she was in her late 70s, early 80s. So she, I honestly, I don't know much about her. Like I said, I was very, very young.
And were you with her for very long?
I was there for a decent amount of time. I think for like a year-ish. But then my mom started like the adoption process, and I started living with them instead. So, but yeah. So she had, she's passed now. She's no longer here, but she had, I think it was the 4 of us. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember. There was 4, it was me, I was the youngest, and then there was 4 other older girls. It ranged from like 13 to like 17. Like she had a lot of older kids. But then she would get younger kids, but they came before me. So at the time it was just the 4 of us, and she would bring all of us to the meetings. Was she a great foster parent? No. A lot of people wanted, all the, the girls that were in there definitely wanted to get out of that situation because she was not a very nice person, unfortunately, which is very interesting. And we'll get into it later because I'll tell you how it all happened. But um, it was just, it was, I kind of went from one bad situation to a not so bad, but not so great situation. So,
Well, sure. I mean,
mm,
by virtue of the Jehovah's Witness piece, there must, there's usually going to be some amount of dysfunction. I mean, and let's face it, every family has its
yeah.
own. We'll get to your specifics, whatever those may be. But um, do you know, did your foster mother, just out of curiosity, I mean, had she done that for a long time? And so I guess I'm wondering how many kids she had go through her home. And I'm also a little curious, were witnesses adopting a lot of these kids?
So no, I think I'm pretty sure I was a special case for, because yeah, no, I was the only one that got adopted into the witnesses. I know a lot of the kids that you grow out of the foster care system. So once you turn 18, you have to be on your own, kind of. And the one girl who did turn 18, she decided to basically live with the foster mother. So she kind of like adopted her. She had um, but I know a lot of people, a lot of the girls that came in, they did not like the religion, and then they left. So, um, and that wasn't really an option for me, like, because like I said, I was 4.
Yeah.
So I was just going along with everything. But I do remember, my mom said that I think there was like 3 other like babies, like younger kids that she would take before me. I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but she said that she was like the only one that she really connected with. So, but she definitely did have a lot. And like I said, they would come stay there and just get adopted out into other families. So
Obviously it's a complicated thing. It's a complex relationship. It's a complex
mhm.
situation in a lot of ways, including the witness piece too. That makes it more complicated. So so then you were with her, you said, for about a year before, and so I mean now you're the ripe old age of what, 4 or 5. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
you're gonna have a
Yeah.
lot of probably memories from that time, or we can't really talk about your witness worldview or anything probably too much at that point.
No.
But
Yeah.
you mentioned that it wasn't the greatest situation necessarily, and then you ended up getting adopted out. So kind of, I guess, what was the arc of that transition for you?
So my adoptive mother, realized that she wanted to adopt me, and it's a whole thing for adoption. It really is. It's a lot of steps. But her and her husband, they did it. They did all the classes and stuff like that, and because they really wanted to adopt me. So but my foster mother did not like that they wanted to adopt me. She did not like that at all. She actually would stop going to meetings with me so that my adopted mother, who wanted to adopt me at the time, could not see me. And I was a kid, and I had this idea that I was going to start living with her because she told me about it and stuff like that. But then I wouldn't see her for like a couple weeks. So then I remember my mom telling me she would like go to her house and tell her like, you can't do this to her, like she doesn't know what you're doing. She thinks I abandoned her. So like I said, my foster mother was not a great person. She wasn't. But my mom persevered, and she did end up adopting me. And then I actually, it was a special case because at the time, I still had my birth mother in the picture. They gave her, I think it was like, they usually give you 1 year, but it was multiple years that they gave her chances to do the classes. And so there was always is my birth mother going to get me back, or they're going to let me let my adoptive parents adopt me. And that was, confusing because I would have to do visits with my birth mom and also live it was a very confusing time for, a child. So it was just a very confusing time. And I had no relationship with my birth mother. And that's something that they, in the statements and stuff like that, they wrote down, is that she has no attachment whatsoever. She's more attached to her adoptive mother. So I actually never got officially adopted till I was 7. So it was 3 years that they let me live with my adoptive mother. It was not set in stone that I was adopted by them yet. I could still at any time, my birth mother could be like, I want her back and I have to go back. So I had to, live in that situation. And, it was very stressful on my adoptive mother too, because she really, really wanted to care for me and stuff like that. And that was always a fear of, she could be taken away at any moment. So.
Yeah, we have friends who adopted a little girl and she, her parents, I think it was a similar situation, and they gave, and I understand all the different angles of it. It's just at the end, the kids who I feel the sorriest for, because they're caught in the middle of this thing with, they're not adults. They have no tools mentally or emotionally to cope with this, and are just torn between all these different possibilities. It's got to feel very unstable and insecure. But I remember the process they went through, and then seeing when it was finalized and they knew they were going to get to keep her officially, and it was a really beautiful thing to get to see. Though I do also realize on the other side of that was a hurting human being that sadly was unable to get their life together, and that's sad too.
My mother was from Haiti, so she came to Haiti, to the United States, specifically New Jersey, and she had a boyfriend, and that's who would abuse me and my brother. So that's why we were taken out of that situation.
Gotcha.
Like I said before, my brother and I were separated. So we weren't together. He's 4 years older than me. So he was at a different level. He remembered a lot more. He was very aware. So he needed a lot more, attention and, therapy and stuff like that to get through what he went through. And I was a baby. So they, assumed that I didn't really remember much. And they kind of just, put me into the foster care system just to, but it was definitely tough. I remember growing up knowing that I had a brother out there. We'll get into more of that later, but yeah, I always knew of my brother because it was always in the documents, but I didn't get to, we actually had visits when we were really young. We would go to Chuck E. Cheese. I remember that was
awesome.
That was my favorite time. And that was still during the adoption process. My mom would bring me and stuff, my adopted mom. But then after a while, he ended up getting adopted with a family in North Carolina, and we were in New Jersey. So we stopped seeing each other, obviously, as much. But they. It was really nice, but it was weird also as a kid to know this is my brother, but I'm not living with him. So
yeah, again, more confusion and conflicts. So so you now are at this place where your adoptive mom is officially taking you on and taking you into her home as her child. And so I guess, is that really, again, you were pretty young, but then it continued on while all of this official legal adoption and foster care and birth mom stuff was going on behind the scenes. There's also this witness piece that is starting to, probably ramp up and go along with it, right? Because you're this little kid now in this witness household with your adoptive mom and dad, right?
Yes. So yeah, there were a couple, and they didn't have any kids yet, and so they decided that they wanted to adopt one.
So now you're just being raised as this little witness kid, right?
Yeah. So it was basically like I was born in, just a little buffer period beforehand. But yeah, I was basically born in. I was raised at it from a very young age. I went to school as a witness. For as long as I went to school, it was just, and it was different when I was younger. My parents weren't really like hardcore witnesses until I got older. So it was a lot different.
Is that why your foster mom didn't want them to adopt you, because they weren't super like strong in the truth, so to speak?
I have no idea. It was weird because my dad became an elder like years later once I got older, but he wasn't beforehand. So he was always encouraged to make that step, but he didn't at the time. But honestly, we don't know why she did that. We actually ended up switching congregations because it created such a tension. So we had to switch congregations, and to get away from that situation. And also I think my adoptive mother was like, I feel like it'll be confusing if you see your foster mom all the time. So, but yeah, it was as I was growing up, now I'm going to be talking about my adoptive mother solely. My mom, she made sure that I felt, a part of the family. Obviously, I'm Black, but my family was all white. They're all Italian/Irish. But she always made sure that she made me feel like that I was a part of the family, no matter, if I looked different or that I wasn't actually her daughter. And she always, like I said before, she was a very creative person. So she would throw these extravagant parties for me every summer. Was not my birthday party, even though my birthday was in July, but she would do it in like August so that it didn't count. But she would throw these like parties for me, and she would invite all the kids in like the surrounding congregations. And my mom was like the star to all the kids, because she would have like ponies at our house, and we'd have big pool parties, and every year was a different theme. So like one year it was the safari, and that's where we had all the animals at our house. We had a big yard at the time. And then she kept doing that as I got older, so it was nice. So I didn't have birthday parties, but I did have parties that she threw for me, so she didn't feel like I was left out. I also, every year we celebrated the date I was adopted. So that was another thing that I would get presents and stuff like that for. So it was really nice. And I hear a lot of stories, and maybe, people not having a rough childhood in, Jehovah's Witnesses, but I did have a good one, and I'm not coming on here to bash my parents in any way, shape, or form. They did an amazing job raising me. It's just that the religion, especially as I got older, I realized how damaging it was, especially because our family is so small because of everyone left. So there's a very little circle.
Well, and that really goes to show the duality that exists in this situation. So while you're not here to bash your parents, as you said, and while they, as humans, the human side of them was obviously caring and nurturing in many ways, um you kind of can't separate them from the witness piece of it. Like that's because that's part of them too, right? And so the damaging parts of the witnesses are going to have to be present to some degree, you know, even in our home lives, because even if you have the most kind, gentle people, they're still going to be participating in things that are unhealthy due to their relationship and ties mentally, emotionally, and identity wise to this thing that is unhealthy itself. And so I love that, but I always love it when I hear stories of people that had parents that did do the best they could to show that they cared, because not everybody had that. And so you know, that is a wonderful thing to have had. And I don't think it's ever, you know, there's the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, and I'm glad that there was some good here to celebrate as well.
Exactly. There was mostly good. It was more of when I got to the age of making friends and I wanted to be friends with people at school that I just started to realize that, oh no, I can't, you know, just go hang out after school with like our back neighbor, like literally the house behind us was my one of my classmates. And, you know, she would always invite me over to, you know, go out and play. But, you know, my mom was always like, you know, I remember she let me go over like a couple of times and then it kind of stopped from there. But then I realized once I went to school, like I couldn't do any of the holidays things. And there's like a holiday like every month, it feels like we're doing something in school. You know, 4th of July, we're coloring flags. So, you know, it was part of a lot of things. And I remember, you know, being in, you know, elementary school and just like I already felt like an odd one out because of my family situation. And, you know, as much as my mom tried to, you know, instill in me that I'm still her daughter, even though I'm not, I still felt like that. And that's what most adoptive kids feel like. It's normal. But now I was even a more odd one out because I was the only witness in my school. So I was the only one going to the library when they were having, you know, parties and stuff like that. I was the only one, you know, doing that sort of stuff. And I remember one time I was like saying to myself, I wish I was just normal, you know, like I just wish I just be normal and not have to do this because it's awkward. Everyone, because then all my friends would be asking, oh, why did you leave or something like that. So that was pretty tough. But then I would get on myself and be like, no, I should be like this, you know, like that's not the right way to think. I remember I was in 1st grade and they had a birthday party. And my favorite flavor ever since I was a kid was red velvet. And they had red velvet cupcakes for the birthday. And I ate one. And I proceeded to sob afterwards and because I felt so bad for eating this cupcake. And my teacher had to call my mom and she's like, you know, she's crying. I let her eat a cupcake, but you know, I just want you to like talk to her to just, you know, make sure it's okay. And my mom was like, you didn't have to cry. It's not that big of a deal. Cause she's like, now we look crazy or something.
Not a healthy environment.
That was just like, if I'm crying over eating a cupcake, then I think we're
and then having your feelings invalidated. Not a healthy environment.
Yeah.
That's not a good moment.
That's when I started to realize that I was different. I was in a different situation.
Yeah.
And I had to quickly adjust to it. Once I got to, I should say, like middle school, that's when they started pressuring me more about like preaching to, you know, classmates and stuff like that. And I was not about that at all. Once I got to middle school, I already separated myself. So I was someone different at school and I was someone different at home. And that was just my way of coping, I feel like. I felt normal at school. I couldn't do anything after school, but, you know, they had band and before school. So I would do that. And like just something so simple as playing an instrument and, you know, the school band made me feel so normal. But then they switched it to after school and then I couldn't do it anymore. So, but yeah, I definitely separated it because it was almost embarrassing, you know, especially as kids get older. You're like 12, 13 now. Your kids are a lot more ruthless in middle school. So,
Well, sure. And it's not just embarrassing, it's that a little part of you is coming out, you know, a little part of you. I like red velvet cupcakes, or I want to play a musical instrument, right? So
yeah.
these are little elements of Ashley as Ashley is growing into her own person that you're finding and saying, this is me. And then they're saying, no, that can't be you.
Yeah. No,
You can't be
it has to
that,
fit
and
in
you should feel shame about it.
yeah, it has to be in the little road. It has to be, can't go outside of it, you know. As
Yeah,
long
live
as
in the
it is
box.
in that, yeah, as long as it's in this box, it's okay. And that is a very, very small box.
It is.
So,
So you're talking about school a little bit, and how you were starting at that point to, you know, the split a little bit with the double life. Again, the secondary life typically being the one that is more authentic,
yeah.
or at least the one that you're wanting to try to figure out who you authentically are because you're being forced into this tiny box. So how did you feel in the box? So let's talk about that. Like, so what was your life like at the Kingdom Hall? Were you a kid that was strongly identifying with all of this stuff? And were you really enjoying the meetings and service or giving talks? And, you know, like, what was in it for you and what was a struggle for you?
So I was the child that was put on a pedestal
Oh, I
because
bet.
of how much I um, participated in meetings, how much I went out in service and stuff like that. So I am such a people pleaser. So I realized that if I do this, this, and this, I'm going to get, you know, praise for this. So you know, as I kept growing older, I was oh, you should be more like Ashley. She's so spiritual, you know, she's so doing this, this, and that, not knowing that I, you know, had my little side life that, you know, but I put on a good show. You know, I have a best friend who I grew up with, and she's not in the, you know, truth anymore, but I was talking to her recently and she was like, you were so into it. I was like, because I felt like I had to get everyone's approval. And I that was one thing. I felt so indebted to my parents for them getting me out of a bad situation that I felt like, okay, I need to do this because it makes them so happy. So I would give comments, I would study, I was, you know, reading the Bible, like I had like daily Bible reading, um, everything that I possibly could when I was, you know, a little bit younger. I feel like once I got to like 15, that's when it kind of started becoming inauthentic. And I was just kind of trying to continue what I had going on already.
Sure,
So,
sure. You know, you're really speaking to this this love versus approval, right? And so love, you can love someone even if you don't approve of everything that they do. But we were taught to seek approval, to become who other people wanted us to be. You mentioned the people pleasing, just so you know, I mean, almost everyone probably that I've talked to on here and in my coaching practice, almost everybody that I talk to there, and I myself as well as a little witness, we are taught to be people pleasers. That's part of that's how they control us, is that
yeah.
they their love or their attention is predicated on our performance. And
hmm
if we don't perform, then it can be withdrawn.
Yeah.
And that's not love, that's control. And so many of us are really, people pleasers trying to chase that approval. And it's a very normal thing to do in that situation. And it doesn't mean that they don't love us on some level, but it shows a lack of depth of love or a lack of fullness of love. They don't really understand it.
No, they don't. And that's I'll talk about that later. But I had a conversation with my mom, and I was like, she doesn't understand, because like I got baptized at, I think it was 14, 15. I don't really remember.
Okay.
Very young. I wanted to get baptized at 13. And my parents said, let's wait. You're still a little young. And then I think it was when I was 15, I ended up getting baptized. And it was weird because I got baptized. And I was the only one, I think, in my congregation that got baptized. So it put all the other kids on like a spotlight. They're like, oh, when are you going next? Like, it's your turn next.
They're on notice now. Got to get baptized.
So, and that almost put fear in me. I was like, I don't want to be in that position where I feel like, because it's really bad, but a lot of the older sisters in the congregation would be like, I wish, this so-and-so, they would say it in front of me. They're like, oh, maybe you can encourage this person who's older than me. They're like 16 and I'm 14, 15, and they're like, maybe you can encourage them to get baptized and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't do that.
Don't you love that word encourage as well? It's like, maybe you can encourage them. Oh, you mean manipulate or guilt them into it? Sure.
Exactly.
Apply peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And so it was very apparent that if you didn't get baptized, you were talked about, and I wonder why they haven't made that step, or what can we do to encourage them to do that. So that's why I made the decision early, because I was like, I don't want to go through that. So
so that's why you made the decision to get baptized, was because you didn't want that spotlight on you. So if you could go ahead and get that over with.
I didn't want the bad spotlight. If I would take the good spotlight.
Yeah, be like, but not the bad one, right?
Yeah, not the bad one. I didn't want that. Like I said, I'm a people pleaser, so I wanted to, and,
as we all were trained to be.
Yeah, as it's so funny. Before I got baptized, I did the questions and stuff like that, and they asked me the question, "Did you pray to get baptized?" And I was like, wait, I was supposed to do that?
Yeah, your dedication prayer. A lot of people were like, yeah, sure.
Sure. I feel like when I was older and looking back, I was like, that just shows that I wasn't really doing it for the right reasons. Like I didn't even, I don't know, I was studying for the questions. That's what I was doing, because the questions were hard at the time. So
we were all just kids. I mean, your choice is do this thing or be ostracized. And, and I think for you that holds this extra level, coming with your background, with your birth mother and your foster mother, and that we were all seeking approval. But I think your situation maybe adds another layer to it. But it's, of course. Is it really a choice? I mean,
no,
you either do this thing or we'll turn on you. Well, I guess I'll do the thing, because what other choice do I have? I don't know any other options.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's what they don't see. And I tried to explain that to my mother. Once I left, I was like, I was 15, and what else was I supposed to do? Not get baptized? And, I mentioned, the other girls that were my age, a little older than me. I was like, what I was going to do, be talked about like everyone else in the congregation, like they were? Like, I was not about to do that. My personality. I'm not going to do that. So she still didn't get it, but.
Well, because she might have to admit that she got baptized for the same reasons, right? Or I don't know her situation, but They're all playing a game trying to pretend to be something they're not.
Yeah.
Because there's so much fear attached to it and investment into this thing. And you just, were able to articulate that and get out earlier.
Yeah. I definitely, I went through a lot in like a span of 1 year. So 15, I was, I can't remember if it was 14 or 15, but I was around there. The year I got baptized, and literally I moved to Florida like a month later. So I was it was a lot of different things happening. So at that time I moved to Florida. I had no more friends anymore, the little friends that I had. I didn't have friends anymore, and I was in a whole new place. So that's a lot for a teenager.
The heck, there's a big difference between Jersey and Florida too.
Very, very big difference. Also, I forgot to mention, I actually was pulled out of middle school. So I got to 7th grade, I got pulled out, and I was homeschooled. So
thereafter entirely?
Yeah, thereafter entirely. So that was even more of I was in that box a little even more. That was my, little outlet, and then that was, taken away. But
can I ask why you were pulled out? Do you know why you were pulled out, or did you ask to, or?
I think my mom always was talking about it for middle school. She wanted to do it for middle school. So only 5th grade, 6th grade, I would have gone right to homeschool. It's like, I want a locker so badly. Like, that's what I told her. I was like, I just want a locker.
Oh, I love kids. It's so simple. I just want a locker.
Yeah, I just wanted a locker, and I wanted that school experience. So she's like, all right, I'll let you do 6th grade. And then she let me do 7th grade. And then 8th grade was the middle school dance. And then she's like, all right, now I'm pulling you out. Now you're done. So I did homeschooling. It was just all online. So I'm in my house, going out in service. There's not much for me to do. And then on top of that, I moved to Florida and had no more friends anymore. So it was a very isolated situation I was once that I got to that older teenage years. So
now you're moving to Florida. You have to make all new friends. I mean, which again, there's the potential feelings of initial abandonment, and then other things. The people pleasing is held out. Now you're having to, start over again. That's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, especially as a kid. Hard.
Yeah. I do know that once we moved down here, both me and my mom went through like a depression because she was moving away from her mother, and they're super, super close. And my dad was having the time of his life because he didn't have to shovel snow anymore, and it was sunny, hot Florida. So he was having the time of his life. But me and my mother were sad because we didn't have any family or friends. So it definitely got better after a little while. But it was.
So was he hard. Kind of the impetus behind the move? Was he?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like for work or if it was a congregational thing or something. Okay.
No, it was just more like we're moving to Florida. We have a great grandmother down here in this specific area, and so that's why we chose this specific area to move. And we moved into our congregation as well. And yeah, my dad's like, I don't feel like shoveling snow anymore. So we found, first we found a condo, and then we moved into a house down here. But yeah, it was definitely my father. He really wanted to move.
So you guys have moved down there. So you're both kind of struggling. You and your mom are both kind of struggling with the, to adapt. It sounds like it is a whole new thing. Did you start to make friends in the congregation? Did you guys start to feel like you fit in? And was it, because it's kind of different when you leave maybe a home congregation or a home area where you've been for a long time and then go somewhere totally new?
Yeah. So I definitely did try. There was younger kids than me, and then there was kids my age, but they were men, so that wasn't, obviously I'm not gonna be hanging out with them. And then there was one other girl my age, but she didn't like me. She did not like me, and I think it was because I was I carried that title around me of like the young, because I started pioneering right afterwards, after I got baptized. So I was that, young pioneer who's homeschooling and dedicating all of her time to, just preaching the word. Um, and I think that definitely caused like some, even my mom admitted it. She was like, honestly, I think that's why you guys are not, because at first she was the girl who was, doing everything, and now I came along. So honestly, me and my mom became really, really close because we were the only people that we had. And me and my mom's relationship wasn't always good when I was younger. She was very quick to have a temper, and would uh, yell a lot and stuff like that. And being the type of personality I am, I kind of just shut down. So I stopped voicing any feelings. I just did what I was told, and then she realized that, because when I started going through the depression, I was not opening up to her whatsoever. And she later apologized to me about it. And it was definitely a good thing, because right before I left, we were really, really good friends, and I'm glad that I had that time beforehand, because I think without it, it would have, I don't know, made me wish I had something. Like I'm glad that I did have that time and it was like a couple years where we did literally everything together, because we were each other's best friends. So
so you two, so I guess, well, that begs a question that kind of skipped over a little bit, and that is, what was life like at home for you, whether it was in Jersey or Florida, what was, obviously you guys had fun parties and stuff.
yes.
So like there was that side, but what was like the daily, like what was the temperature of the room? Were you all just very like into the JW stuff? Were you, really into the witness stuff? Did everybody kind of go to their own corners? Were you all really tight?
So I feel like we were more of we kind of got more into it as I got older. So I feel like when she realized, I'm having more association and stuff like that, it's like we got to a point where we threw all our Disney movies out that included magic in it. Like it was just, that was the worst day of my life, honestly, because
you love those Disney movies, huh?
Yeah, we threw out Frozen. Even my mom loved the movie Frozen, and she had to throw it out. And she was like, "I really like this movie." I was like, "So why?" So that was a really funny moment. But
and you had siblings too, right?
No, I was the only child. I do have a half brother, but he was put into a different family.
Right. So. I'm sorry. I for some reason I had it in my head that this family had. That's right. They didn't have any other kids. That's right.
No,
I remember that now. I know I got that in my head. Okay, so it was just the three of you.
Yeah, I was an only child. I love being an only child. I did not like other kids very much. I was a very interesting child. I would have, my mom would always like babysit some of like the younger kids in the kindergarten congregation. And, like an hour in, I'd be like, all right, can they go home now? Like they're my stuff, they're my space. I just don't want them there. But going back to like my family life, it was interesting, because I won't say it was amazing, and I won't say it was bad. It had its good and bad moments. When I was younger, my parents argued a lot. I mean, my mom was like 25, and so they definitely did argue a lot. And I was young, so I didn't really know what was happening, but I became the spokesperson for my mother as I got older, because my dad was very, he did not give her a lot of credit, you know, just with like little things. He wouldn't help around the house, you know, he just didn't. He was a very difficult person to live with. And so as I got older, you know, I'm like this 12-year-old being like, you need to get up and do something, you know, to my father, because, you know, my mom wouldn't do it because, you know, she always felt like that, oh, you know, I have to have respect. And when I was younger, I would tone it down a little bit, you know, but as I got older, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm a very, like, I stand up for my mother, and I always will. And I definitely did take on that role. You know, he wasn't really a father to me. Like, he didn't really take on that fatherly role. It was more of he was a sibling. And my mom would say this all the time. She's like, I feel like I have two children, and you guys are arguing all the time and tattletaling on each other.
Just FYI, being the because this was my life as well, but just in a therapeutic way, just so you know, it's very, 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 very unhealthy and unfair for a parent to have their child be their spokesperson. It is talk about people pleasing and codependency and things like that. That's not healthy adulting and parenting. I too was the spokesperson for my mom in many ways, and there's a name for that. It's a whole nother discussion, but not super healthy.
No, yeah, and I feel like that's where it wasn't really wasn't abusive, but it was just different things that I feel like were not healthy, like you said.
Well, and there can be mental and emotional abuse. You know, it doesn't have to be physical or sexual. You know, abuse comes in many forms, or if we don't want to use the term abuse, we can just say unhealthy behaviors come in many forms, and a child should never feel like they are responsible for their parents. It's supposed to be the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, like that's not how it's supposed to be. You don't owe your parents stuff. They brought you, you know, either into the world or brought you into their family. They kind of are supposed to be that for you. You're the kid.
Yeah, and I definitely realized that as I got older.
Yeah, it forces you to grow up really young.
It really does. It really does. Like I felt like a marriage counselor at 16.
Yes.
So it was, and you know, my mom was she would bottle everything up, right? She wouldn't say something, like something would bother her. She wouldn't say it right away, but then something would happen and then she would explode. And then all of a sudden, you know, here's all the things in the past 3 months that have happened. And, you know, that would happen every couple months. And my dad was not very receiving. He'd be like, no, I didn't say that. What are you talking about? You're crazy, stuff like that. And it was so frustrating for her. And so I was the person, you know, because we're about Jehovah's Witnesses, there always has to be like two people, you know, to vouch for something. I was that second person. I was like, you did say this. You did, you know, you did do this. You know, she's not being crazy.
But that kind of creates this unhealthy trauma bond where, you know, you're going through something with your mom, you know, and you're kind of like trying to be the rescuer of your mom from your dad. And that trauma bond creates a lot of codependency and such, and that's just very normal in those circumstances. Again, raise his hand. I think I was there with my mom a lot too, and it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah, no,
sorry you had to go through that too, and that she wasn't able to advocate other than in this way, which then obviously wasn't well received.
So yeah, that was definitely a thing, because you know, my parents there was always like a distance between my parents.
Sure.
Mostly because from my dad, he is very hard time showing emotion. And I can count on the amount on my hand, like my one hand, how many times I've seen him cry. So it was a very emotionally absent person. And my mom's very emotional. So it was just, she was always pulling for like emotion out of him, and he was just not receiving.
Goodness, I think we grew up in the same house.
Yeah.
And just so you know, sometimes it's easy to see the person that is emotionally absent as clearly the one in the wrong, but sometimes that person has shut down because the other person has overcome them or overreached them or tried to make them codependent with them. And so they've had to put up walls to try to find safety. So like it's a dynamic, it's a relationship, it's two people relating to one another. And it's always easy to demonize the one. I demonized my dad my whole life. And later in life, and as I got healthier and as I learned new things, I came to realize, oh yeah, it was both of them. They both had their parts to play in it, and one was shutting the other down. And there's all this stuff. Most likely, they're just people, but they're probably mismatched people that maybe shouldn't have necessarily been together.
Yeah,
like a lot of witness couples.
A lot. There was always two sides to one story. And I feel like that was my dad. He always, shut down. He would always say, anytime I got involved, it was like, oh, here we go, 2 against 1. He always felt like, and he grew up with twin brothers, so it was literally 2 against 1 his entire life. They would always, gang up against him because they were twins, and he was the older brother. And he was like, he would always be like, just like my brother, my brothers is 2 against 1 again. So it was just his way of, defending himself. But like you said, my mom did have a way of just trying to get things out of you, and she would not stop until she got something out of you. And she did that to me my entire life.
No, that's not healthy.
No.
I'm sure she means well. But I realized that about there's a lot of parallels here. I understand a lot of this. They're just people. Look, at the end, it's not, as people, we've kind of got to get away from demonizing one person or another and just try to get to understanding all the complexities of relationships and such. And seeing that, it really does kind of take two. And you start to see how people play off of one another and sometimes keep the thing going, or one person's overreaching and the other person can't speak up for themselves, and then they end up giving too much and they feel resentment and then they demonize. It's just a whole thing.
No, it definitely,
we are complex.
It definitely, and I think it was, if, like you said, if they were paired up differently with someone that was actually compatible with their, emotions and stuff like that, I feel like it would have been a lot different. It was a very empathetic person and a non-empathetic person, and that doesn't really, it doesn't match up.
Could that be called a very codependent person and perhaps a rather narcissistic person? Because that's kind of what Jehovah's Witnesses is. It is kind of a lot of narcissistic people leading a lot of codependent people. And then there's, they're two sides of the same coin. There's there can be some narcissism in codependency, right? Because it's like, I know what's best for you. Well, how do you know? You're going to get involved in my life and try to rescue me here. It's a really interesting thing. There's so much to learn about all of this. But your family is a lot of people's family.
A lot of people's family, And
Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shun swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like ex-JWhelp.com, that's exjwhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
When I was starting to leave, mentally, I should say. So it's physically and mentally out. That's what I was reading. I was reading a lot of stories, and I was like, wow, that's my family. That's exactly what I'm feeling. It was nice because it was like, finally my feelings are validated. I couldn't go to my mom, because then she's going to talk to elders and talk to my dad and make me read more publications. So that was not what I was going for. When I was 16, I got my first job at like a store. And I loved that job. And I loved, being out there in the world again, I love my coworkers. But I also worked with another witness. Another witness worked at the same job. We became friends, but it was just very interesting because it was like, I got really close to my coworkers and be like, we should go out to eat. I'd be like, I can't, it's something so simple, and it was just like, it gave me so much stress and so much anxiety. And that's what really started taking a toll on me as I got older. I had a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety. I went through this period, and my mom always used to say, oh, they told me that you wouldn't really remember much, or you probably were going to be okay, as you got older. And she's like, that's not the case. She's like, I still have a lot of, internal things about myself from being adopted that affect my daily life now, because that's what happens as you get older. So, for a while, I could not order my own food. That just gave me so much anxiety. I would always make my mom, but my mom was a pusher. So she was like, you're going to order your own food. You're going to get over this. And in a sense, it was good. I did learn I can order my own food now. But it was the same thing with Halloween. When I was young, I had a terrible fear of Halloween decorations. Now I love Halloween. I got to dress up for the first time this year. But when I was young, she would drag me into the Halloween store and make me touch everything to realize that it wasn't, it wasn't real or something like that. She was just a very encouraging person. And in the long run, it did help me. But at the time, I was screaming and kicking in the Halloween store. So yeah, it was just very interesting. I'm getting so sidetracked. I'm so sorry.
No, it's this is all how I asked what things were kind of like in your home, and this is a slice of life, right? And it's some of the reality. And there's a lot of people who have been through similar things and who have had, Jehovah's Witnesses see feelings as something to be fixed, not something to be honored or respected. Jehovah's Witnesses see humans as either serving them or problems. There's not a lot of in between, and it's very all or nothing, black and white thinking. And it's not always the safest environment to be in. And it's funny to hear you say that about not being able to order your own food. Just because I went on a night hike last night for the first time alone. I've never done that by myself, just out in the woods.
Not too good either.
and I pushed myself to do it as part of, you know, my own dealing with my own anxiety, because I was very anxious as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They create a lot of anxious people because you have to be hyper vigilant, run everything through filters so as to not get in trouble and to make everybody happy. And so it creates a hyperactive mind in some ways. But I had posted just today on Facebook about the hike last night and some dark pictures from being out there. And that, you know, it was how proud I was of being able to do that, because there was a time in my life, Ashley, where I could not go into a restaurant or order my own food either, to a degree, because the pressures and the expectations and the judgments and the control exercised upon me by Jehovah's Witnesses and my own family had shut me down to a place where I was so anxious. I was probably borderline agoraphobic at some points, where I really didn't even think I could leave the house. And I thought I was this hugely socially anxious person and all this stuff. And I found after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses that it's interesting how a lot of that just kind of vaporized and went away. It was interesting. Not that I still have my base psychology, and you know that we all do, that can get in the way. Our brain, we don't control our brains, but we can push past sometimes, or you know, negotiate with our brains and go out and do the things that we need to do for ourselves. But that's us deciding to do it and not someone else forcing us to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a difference.
And that's something that I realized, though. It was like once I got to my older ages, and you know, the depression and anxiety got really bad, I've realized that like the Bible did not help. And that was, I think that was, I sort of said that to my mother. And I was like, I told her, I was like, this is something that I can't pray away, you know? And I think that's when she realized that I needed help. And she did. She got me help. She got me therapy. But I was instructed to not mention that I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So
don't mention the very thing that is probably causing the problems in your life.
Exactly, because she's like, then they're gonna, because she's like, then they're gonna think that that's what it is. I'm like, maybe because it is that, you know, but
yeah, but we value the appearance of the organization over the individuals therein and their mental health.
Yeah, and that was, it wasn't. I needed mental health help a lot earlier. And it was very later, too late, honestly, that I got it. But I did get it, and it did work. But then my mom stopped it because she didn't feel like it was helping me. Because I had one session, and I love cats. I had 2 cats at my parents' house. One session, we literally talked about our love of cats one time, and then my mom was like, you know, I feel like there's no point to this. And I was like, but it's just nice to be able to talk to someone that's not my mother or my parents, you know? And
yes, and you're also building a relationship with a healthy individual, which is that relationship building can be part of the therapeutic process.
Exactly. That was still one of the things. I was still getting to know her as a therapist. So,
but you see the viewing people like problems to be fixed. Like, well, I mean, you had a whole hour with this individual and you're not fixed yet. I mean, come on. And you know, that's something that I find too, you know, people, that's an expectation I think that comes along with the witness perspective, because sometimes people will come to work with me and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, maybe 1-2 sessions should do. You can't erase decades of indoctrination and deep programming and maybe even your formative years in 2 hours. That doesn't sound reasonable. You can't do that. You can't even get into it hardly and really start to uncover things. But
so it was weird because like I knew that talking to the therapist, I was leaving so much out.
Sure.
Like I was just kind of like not letting her know as much that was bothering me, and my mom was in the other room, so there's not much that I could say. And that was part of, and it was, that therapy was not working. It was not working. So that's why I stopped.
It wasn't given a chance.
No, yeah. So
you have to be, part of being healthy is being able to be authentic, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of depression and anxiety is because we're trying to be someone we're not, and trying to make other people happy and things like that. And if you're in therapy and you've got somebody listening in and then grilling you afterward about what it was about and what you said, that's not giving therapy a chance.
No, yeah. And this was during COVID. So it was like through Zoom. So that's why I was home. If I could have went to like a therapy session and not have my mother right there, it would have been perfect. But and I had to say COVID was the best thing. COVID was what woke up a lot of people, including me. Because I was pioneering still. And there were so many people being like, you can do 70 hours of letter writing. And I was like, no, I cannot. I will literally go insane. So I know that they took the hourly requirement away and stuff like that. But I remember sorry, go ahead.
No, can I ask, so you were a pioneer, because this is something I guess I wasn't in the congregation, right, during COVID. So you were a pioneer and they took the hour requirements away. So what prevented everyone from being pioneers then?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people were thinking. It didn't really make sense. I think they were encouraging people to sign up. They were like, "Oh, there's no hourly requirement now, so pioneer." It was like, it
has no way to inflate some numbers.
Yeah, but then I'm saying it has no meaning now because there's no requirement for it. So that's when I was just slacking, and my depression and anxiety got a lot worse because I was home all the time with my parents, the three of us. It was a lot, and I remember I was crying to her, and I was like, I do not want to pioneer anymore. Like, I can't do this. And my dad was like, well, there's no point of you stopping because there's no hourly requirement. And I was like, but I still feel pressure because everyone's like, well, you should be getting your 70 hours still. And I was like, I still feel pressure and I can't handle that pressure anymore. And I didn't stop pioneering. I continued going. So
you continued?
Yeah, I continued. I did not. They did not really let me do that.
But who didn't let you? Your parents?
My father.
Okay.
Yeah. He was like, "There's no point because then if you get announced and you're not pioneering anymore, people are gonna think something happened." Blah 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 blah. That whole thing.
About appearances, not about the reality.
Exactly. So that's when I started to really. I think it wasn't until like a couple months before I left. It was maybe like in the beginning of the year that I left. I found the ex-JW Reddit forum, and that, like I said, it was eye-opening to see how many people related to what I was feeling, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm physically and mentally questioning, and stuff like that. And at that point, I didn't have any connection to like the teachings. I didn't really believe in it. I think I kind of didn't believe in it throughout my childhood. Like paradise was like a very hard thing to wrap around my head. I was just like, and COVID was supposed to be the Great Tribulation, and that was the start of it. And now here we are out of the COVID and living on with life.
Jehovah was foiled by a vaccine, and just the natural progression of a virus and how it becomes less virulent over time.
Exactly. So it was just that was when I started to really be like, I don't want to do this anymore, and I need to start a plan of how I'm going to get out of this as easily as possible. So I did start. Once I turned 18, I started dating my boyfriend, whose name I will mention, Miguel. He was. I didn't tell him about my situation for a little bit, until he wanted to start officially dating, and I was like, well, just so you know, I'm in a cult. So, and it was so funny because this story of how we met, and it is really crazy. So our Kingdom Hall, he lives right down the street from the Kingdom Hall that I go to. So I went to his house for the first time, and I was like, oh my God. And there's a bunch of witnesses that live in his neighborhood. I was like, I'm going to get caught now, because this is literally right next to the Kingdom Hall. And I go to his house, and it was a house that I knocked on his door, like not even like 2 years prior, before COVID. And I was like, I've been to your house before. You probably just didn't answer the door. It was crazy. It was really, really funny. He's like, oh yeah, I don't answer to you guys, really. I don't do that. I was like, good thing. But it was funny. So we were dating for a little bit. And then
How did
it
you
just got
meet
so.
him though? Did you?
I
Was
met him
that
through Tinder.
Oh, okay. Not
Yeah.
like work or something. Okay.
Yeah, no, not what Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be doing, but I
Understood.
was I knew if I was going to be out by myself, I had no friends. I didn't have anyone. I was like, I need someone to, so that I'm not going out by myself. And that was probably it was a lot of pressure on him. And then now that I realized it wasn't, I'm also a codependent person. So, but it ended up working out. But going back to before, I'm sorry, I ramble so much.
Oh
When
no! So you guys started dating, and
yeah, I finally told him about it, and he was like, well, I completely understand, I don't want you to, feel pressured into doing something. I was like, no, I want to get out. And he's like, I don't want to be the reason that you're getting out. And I was like, trust me, I was out mentally a long time ago. So, and I was going to continue dating him, secretly. What I would do is I worked late at the time. I worked at a college Starbucks, so we closed really late. And I would just say, oh, I'm working like a double shift, and then I'd go hang out with him after work or something like that. So I had my ways around things. And then all it started to get really, really close to the end, and I saw it because my mom got really on top of me. All of a sudden, she wanted to track my phone. She wanted to know where I was all the time, and it was very tough and frustrating because I was, trying to balance both things basically, and it was very hard to. So before I left, I was invited to Pioneer School. And this is like, when I tell you months beforehand, it was months beforehand. And that was my last chance. I gave that was my last chance. And I prayed and I said, if something is if I'm supposed to be in this and if I'm supposed to stay, have something reach out to me in this week-long school, have something reach out to me. And I studied. I wasn't, slacking. I really studied and I really paid attention, and nothing grabbed my attention. So I was like, I can't keep, doing this anymore. I was like, that was my last chance that I gave it. And when I tell you I gave it a lot of chances, I gave it a lot of chances. I actually did the work. I was not a person that just made it seem like I was a spiritual person. I actually was a spiritual person. I just felt so empty being a spiritual person. So, and that's what I realized, that even though I was doing all of these things, the good things, I was so internally empty that it wasn't enough. So
It's an interesting way that you put that about. Well, I guess it's deeper, but you said that it's not like I wasn't a spiritual person. I just felt empty being a spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because their definition of spiritual, again, goes back to performance. So you're spiritual because you're at all the meetings. You're spiritual because you go out in service or give comments or even study at home or go to pioneer school. That makes you spiritual.
Yeah.
That's just doing the things. That doesn't mean that you necessarily believe it. There are people giving talks this Sunday. Well, today is Sunday. All right. So it's Sunday and it's noon here Eastern time. So today there was somebody who gave a public talk as an elder that doesn't believe any of this and may even be an atheist because he's afraid that he's going to lose his family if he is himself. Yeah. So is he spiritual? He's doing all the things. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't realize who they're sitting around with at the Kingdom Hall. Yeah. You know, they don't realize that the guy running mics or the sister who's the pioneer or whatever, right? Like that person may not believe, but they're doing all the things that they would be called spiritual, which is just such a dumb word when you think about it in terms of like, it's not of spirit. You're just doing the things, you know, it doesn't mean anything.
And I think that was the problem. Like we felt that we were spiritual if we got like recognition. So like if someone was like, "Oh, your comment was so good," and I was like, "Okay, well that was a good comment." So like obviously I'm doing what's right in Jehovah's eyes because I just got a comment from like a compliment for it. So it's a very interesting, and I think that's why I felt so empty because I really wasn't doing anything. It was all for show. So.
Well, and I think a lot of people inside of it really aren't connected to it. They're not. They're connected to some part of it, or there's something in them that it has given them, or they're just afraid to leave or afraid to look at it because they would have to admit that they're wrong. And you know, there's a lot of psychology that goes into that, but it's I don't know, what does it mean to be a spiritual person inside that context? You know, outside of that context, I understand there are people that connect deeply to nature or, you know, to other individuals or whatever, and they may see that, you know, have spiritual experiences or whatever, where they really connected to something. You know, standing next to a waterfall at night in the dark with no light on and just feeling the power of the water falling right beside you. Like you can kind of connect to that. That's you know, I would describe that as a spiritual experience, I guess, if you want to give it that, because like you're connecting to the power of this thing, but it's just emotion. It doesn't mean anything beyond your experience in that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's when I definitely want to get into when I actually left, because it's a very interesting story, and everything afterwards, it was hell basically. So I ended up coming home from work one day, and my mom sat me down and she was like, you know, I feel like something's up with you. And my mom is the prior. She will get something out of you no matter what. And I don't know, at that, I was not financially ready to move out. I did not fulfill my plan yet. Like I said, I had a plan prior. But something in my heart told me, I was like, you know what, you want the truth? I said that. I said, do you want the truth? And she's like, yes. I said, all right, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And that was not what she was expecting. She did not see that coming whatsoever. At first she thought I was gay, and that's why. And I was like, no, I have a boyfriend. You don't have to worry about that. But then I was like, wait, that's so much worse. So it was really funny. That was also one of the times my dad's cried, was when he realized I had a boyfriend. And they were like, well, you know, we can, like, what do we do for now? We were actually supposed to go to Disney the next day. That obviously didn't happen, which I was very annoyed with. I really wanted to go to Disney the next day, but Within 10 hours, I had a duffel bag and I was out of the house. So it was a very quick situation. And, before I left, my dad was extremely angry, and I had recently bought his car. I paid off like the rest of the car payment. I gave him the money for it. So it was my car technically, but he still didn't want to give it to me. He was like, I don't want to give it to you. Mom's like, so she's going to be walking around with a duffel bag? That's too cruel to the point. So my mom was the one, like I said, she's a very loving person and she will always be a mother first. And so I was really glad about that because I at least had my car. But before I left, she sat me down and told me that no one is ever going to love you out there as much as I do. And that was a pretty shocking thing to hear, that no one else is going to love you out there. It's not real love that's out there. And it's just great because the rest of my life has been proved her wrong, because I've received so much love from random people that, I wouldn't expect it from. But I feel like you have something to say about that.
I'm just sitting here listening. That phrase just hit me. I had a reaction because that's the same thing. So we're gonna go stereotypes here. A husband who's beating his wife and abusing her and keeping her in the house, isolated, away from everyone else. What is he gonna say? If you leave me, no one will ever love you like I do. That is a hallmark of abuse. Jehovah's Witnesses say, if you leave us, the world will eat you alive. No one out there will ever love you like we do. And here your own mom, who chose you, who adopted you, is saying that same abusive statement, that no one will ever love you like I do. And it's just not.
I was very shocked that she said that. I was. And I am a very stubborn person. So I drove away very determined to prove that wrong. So at the time I worked on a college campus. So my coworkers were also on college campuses. So I went from like jumping dorms, sleeping in dorms, to like sleeping in my car sometimes, because they couldn't have guests over in their dorms. And that was the first act of love from a random person who didn't know me. It was my friend Rebecca, and she is my best friend still to this day. And she showed me so much love. And I just worked with her. I was her supervisor, and yet she was, so willing to help me out, because I had all of my belongings in my car. I have a picture of it. I set up, those like Walmart plastic bins.
Oh yeah.
I would sleep in my car, and then I would get up, get ready for work. I would take a shower at my friend's dorm real quick, and I had the plastic bins all set up in my car, and I would get dressed, right out of my car and stuff like that. So I made it work. I definitely made it work. But, it was very helpful having, like I said, just a random, girl my age being like, just, stay with me for as long as you need to. So yeah, it was. I also, obviously, my boyfriend at the time, we were still very new to dating. So I did not expect him nor want to rely on him in any sort of way. I kind of wanted to have get through this on my own, but he was there, still very supportive of me. It was really nice. I ended up finding my own apartment, got my own apartment. And that was a really big step for me. I felt so accomplished and feeling, and everything was just working out for me. And then it wasn't. And then I was like, oh God, is this what they're talking about? You know, after it's good for a little bit, but then, you know, the world's, you know, Satan tosses you aside, is what they would say. He stopped showing you the good. And I became very depressed. I would call my mom and she would answer, and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And she still was talking to me a little bit because, I didn't even have all of my stuff. Like I just had clothes. So like I didn't even have all of my stuff.
Were you disfellowshipped
So,
or anything?
oh yeah. Yeah. They technically they disfellowshipped me over the phone.
Okay. So they were real quick to handle this and get you.
My dad called the elders like within 15 minutes.
And how
Like of
long
me
did it
telling.
take them to disfellowship you?
Well, I ignored them for a really long time, and then
Oh, okay.
my dad came. I had to meet him at the DMV to get the car in my name, and he's like, "Can you please just tell them your statement so that we can be done with this, like to get it over with?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. I shouldn't have. I don't owe them anything, but they just called me.
They could disfellowship you anyway. I mean, they're
Yeah, exactly.
So
And I knew
really
that, but I was
doesn't
just like,
matter.
they were just calling me all the time.
Yeah, and
So,
sometimes
then
it's easier just to get it over with and move on yourself.
exactly, and that's why
Let
I
them
did
do what they
that.
want to do. They're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I changed my number still because I gave it to my mom because I still had to. But then they gave them my new number. I had voicemails and stuff like that, and so finally, us and my boyfriend were going into Target, and they call me, and it was really sad because they were all crying, and it was because I was like this high pioneer in their eyes, and they were like, I definitely shocked a lot of people with this one. And it was just because I never let anyone know what was truly going on. So
because it's not safe to.
no, it's not. And I gave them my statement. I was like, yes, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And they're like, all right, then we'll have to disfellowship you. And then that was the end of it. But it was definitely freeing because I felt like no one has to be calling me anymore. No one has to be, basically harassing me. It was weird because I would get calls from like an elder's wife. I got a call from an elder's wife. And technically, she's not supposed to know about that because this is supposed to be like and she calls me like faking a conversation. Like, hey, I just want to see how you were doing. I was just like, oh, come on. Like, I'm not going to answer to that. Yeah, I'm not going to answer to that. And then I had another elder call me and he's like, yeah, I wanted to get your field service time for this month. I was like, are you kidding me? I know that you just want to get me on the phone. That's what I know. But it was funny how they tried to trick me into answering this telephone. It was really funny. But
so and I know I digressed a little bit with that question because I didn't know where you were as far as because like your mom wasn't talking to you and such, and I didn't know if you were even officially out yet.
Yeah,
because they rushed.
Yeah.
I mean, within 10 hours, you were duffel bag in hand to get out. I mean, so these are not. That's just such a horrible send off, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's brutal. I mean, after everything, to just be like, get out. That's so awful. You deserve better than that. But
it was tough though too because like I said, I had only like half of my clothes, right? So I went back and my mom had like all my stuff packed up in bags, ready at the door. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate it. And I had to give back. Like I gave back like because we have a gated community, so I gave back like the scanner to get in the gated community because I wasn't living anymore. But I kept the house key. And the only reason why I kept the house key was because I still had stuff that I needed to get because I still had some of my belongings there. Like as I got older, like I bought furniture for my room. Like it was my stuff that I bought. And then I go back the other day and I tried to call them to see if they're home or whatever. So it's like, hey, I have my apartment now. I want to get the rest of my stuff because I have furniture and stuff. And they changed the locks on me. And we have cameras, and my mom recorded that and saw that that was like the first time that I got so angry, like, because it was just so frustrating. Like, I'm just trying to be as peaceful as possible, and they were just treating me like I was a criminal, almost like, we're going to change the locks on you. I also had 2 cats. They were my cats that I adopted, and they wouldn't let me see them. So I
This is part of the extortion to get you to come back.
Yeah, and it was
so you didn't get to get any of your stuff?
They would my dad would he would meet me somewhere and like he gave me like when we had to do the DMV thing a couple months later, and that's when
but like the later, furniture and cats.
Yeah, so they still have that. Like, they have my bike. I have a bike, and I have like a big like chair, which I kind of want that back. It was like $200-$300. So
well, and it's your thing.
Yeah.
Again, yeah. This is not love. This is control.
Honestly, they probably redecorated my room now that I think about it. But because my dad always wanted an office, so there's his office.
Oh, I'm so happy he gets to get it.
He gets his office now.
Congrats, Dad.
Yeah, no, it was
wow.
And I don't think my mom. She did have an idea of how much like I struggled in the beginning. Like, I literally had all my belongings in my car. And she didn't realize that until I was in the hospital a couple months later. So a couple months later, I was having episodes of like seizures. And so I was hospitalized for a week. And my father never came to see me, but my mom did. And they were basically telling me that you cannot live on your own because you have a seizure disorder. So you need to find someone to take care of you. And my mom was basically just pleading with me, just come back home, because then you won't have to worry about it. And I was like, nope, I'd rather pass out and have a seizure by myself than go back to that situation. And that's when my boyfriend really stepped in. He was over at my apartment all the time, but I had a lease, so I had to stay there for a certain amount of time. But then I ended up living with him for a little bit, and his mom and his sister. So they were there for me when I was going through that whole medical crisis, and that was another point where I was like, why do I get this thing now? I was like, everything was like falling apart, so to speak. And it was really, really tough.
But isn't it falling apart, and isn't it tough because your parents threw you out on the damn street with a duffel bag and won't let you have your stuff and never taught you how to be independent in the first place and gave you no tools, right? Like, they set you up to fail.
Basically.
And then the stress of it, I don't know if you have I don't know anything about your seizure disorder, but I mean, stress can...
It definitely made it worse. So my seizures, I could have a regular seizure. I'm on medication for now. It's all under control, thankfully. Good. But if my mental state was heightened and in the hospital, my mom just being there was just made me 100 times worse. So I kicked her out one time. I was like, my boyfriend's coming. I need you to leave. Like, this is not. And in the hospital, that was kind of like our parting goodbye. She was kind of like, I can't talk to you anymore. Like, this is where it needs to end. Because if you're not coming home, then you're on your own, basically.
And home means back to Jehovah, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not home. Just
because it's not like you could go to her house and she'd take care of you and let you not go to meetings.
No, exactly. It was, you had to break up with your boyfriend, and then you can come home. And I was like, well, and Miguel was the only person that was taking care of me at that time. He really was. And, he worked nights then. So he would work nights, and in the morning he would come to the hospital and stay with me all day and would sleep there. And, my own father did not show up once. So I was like, I'm not breaking up with the person that is literally the only person there for me. Like, that's ridiculous. So she actually, my mom, like I said, my mom has good and bad moments. She called. I had to call her because she wasn't there one day, and I had to discuss something with the doctor, and Miguel was there too, and she just thanked him for taking care of me. And she said that, I really appreciate you taking care of me. And he was like, of course, I care about her and stuff like that. Oh, she also tried to get me to marry him, like, in the hospital. I think she was just, like, desperate, and she was like, "Can you just marry him so that we can, like, this can be fine?" And I was like, "No, I just met him."
Gosh, like
So
they are willing to sacrifice your relationship. They are willing to sacrifice your health, your life. If you die of a seizure out, on your own somewhere, like they are willing to sacrifice any of that for. They're willing to have you sacrifice everything, but they are not willing to sacrifice anything.
anything, yeah. And that's what my mom would say. She was like, it's not fair for me to it's not fair for me for you to be, out there doing whatever you want, and you still being able to talk to me. Like, there's consequences for your actions. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, well, if you want to do what I'm doing, you can leave too. It's it's not, it was really funny the way she said it. But it just showed me, like, they want to punish you as much as possible, and they literally take your family away from you. And that's the most important thing in people's lives, is family. And that's how we are as humans, is to have some sort of community and family.
Well,
So
sure, and it's Jehovah's Witnesses that do it. You can say they, like the organization, takes your family from you, but also our family has some choice in this too.
exactly. Yeah.
And they're responsible to some degree for their own actions.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people out there who are disfellowshipped who have family that still talks to them.
I still talk to them. And what's so funny? That's a lot of my family. Once I finally left, I actually reached out to my mom's sister, and she is no longer in the religion. She left years ago with her husband. They both left at the same time. And when my mom found out about that, she was livid, like, absolutely livid. So my aunt was not, like, officially disfellowshipped. She was just left. And so her mother would still talk to her and stuff like that. But after they heard that I was in connection with her, they all blamed it on her and thought, like, oh, she was the one who brought her out. And I was like, give me some credit. No, it wasn't.
No, but that's all about them. See, they don't want to feel like they did something wrong.
Yeah.
Because they're told, or they believe, that they can control your entire life, right? They can get you to do whatever they want because you're a robot. And if not, then it must be, so it's either I did something wrong, or now they found the convenient scapegoat, right? They found somebody else, because it can't be that there's anything, quote, wrong with you, because that would reflect badly on them, and they can't have that.
Yeah, no, my mom said this a couple of times. She's like, I just feel like you're not in the right mental state. I think you should, come home, think about everything. I was like, no, this is the first time that I'm actually being honest with you right now. And I was like, and if it's crazy for you to think that, then that just shows you how much I was, burying inside of me, because she thought I was, losing my mind, but I wasn't.
Yeah, I've never been more sane in my entire life.
Literally. But it was so funny, because before I got my apartment, actually, I stayed with a cousin who was a family member who I had no idea, who lived like 10 minutes away from my house. And this is just what happens with witnesses, and they close everybody out. they don't even tell you about other family that you have.
Nope.
And so my aunt went on Facebook and was like, if anyone in Fort Myers can, give have somewhere for me to live, that would be great. And then my cousin reached out and she let me stay with her. And it was like getting to know a new person. And it was, of course, it's my adoptive family, but still, I still look at them as my family. And that was amazing. I got to stay with her and her daughter for a little bit. And she gave me my first Christmas. She spoiled me, honestly. She really did. She knew I was moving in, so she gave me a new TV and like just everything that I needed to be comfortable in my new environment. And it was just a lot of love from people that are not supposed to have love and not supposed to care about other people. And it was just like, wow, that's insane. So
yeah, isn't it weird to think it's almost like we grew up in an entirely alternate reality where everything is opposite or backward. And then we go out into the real world and it's like, wow, everything that I was told about this is not necessarily true. I mean, that's not to say that, of course, there's, unhealthy people in the world who will take advantage of you, obviously, but there are in the organization too. Let's not act like they're
no, exactly
perfect, right? We're all just human, and when we can humanize people and really get to understand one another, it opens up a whole new world instead of this closed off, isolated, judgmental us versus them mentality.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting though, because even with my boyfriend's parents, his mother, she became like another mother. There's another mother in my life now. But she became that other mother for me, and it was really nice. Like she would let me cook with her and stuff like that. And it was just so nice to have that back. And, she let me live there even for a little bit because she knew I didn't have anywhere to go. And it was like, my mom was my adopted mom was so wrong. And it felt really nice to get that out of my head because that was ringing in my head for a very long time that no one else was going to truly love me like she could. So it was very healing for me. I also went to very intense therapy because when I was in having my seizures, they thought it was part of my, mental stress and stuff like that. And that also really helped me. And that was finally a therapist where I had no mom, outside the door, and I could just be myself and I can talk to her. Which my mom actually paid for a while. She paid for that, therapy. So like I said, my mom is a great person. She tried to help me as best as I could. And I feel like the only reason why she stopped was because of my dad. I think my dad got to her and was like, you cannot be supporting her in any way, shape, or form. And
oh yeah, you're seeing a little bit of your mom's humanity break through, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Beyond the all the other parts of her that dominate her most of the time.
Yeah, and that was the part that really sucked because I could see how hard it was for her. And my entire life I was trying to make my mother happy, and finally I was hurting her in such a way that she could not even describe. So it was very hard for me to go through that, but I knew that I needed to because I could not do it. I couldn't do it anymore. Like I physically couldn't. I would have like a mental breakdown because it was just getting too much. So
well, and ultimately it's not your responsibility to make her happy.
Exactly.
Her happiness is her own responsibility, nor did you hurt her. She is hurt because of her own expectations. There are plenty of kids that have boyfriends, at 18 or whatever, and people don't have to shun them and throw them out with a duffel bag to live in their car on the streets. They're this is of her own doing. This is of her own belief system.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, because if not for that, then this doesn't even have to have ever been a problem.
Mm-hmm. And that was the thing. It was such a little thing. I just had a boyfriend, and of course I had sex with him, and that's what set it over the edge. That was what I was like, absolutely not. It's just
people do that all the time and still have their families too.
Exactly, yeah. And for a while I let myself be sad. I wish that things were differently. I wish that they would just I used to have dreams that my mom would just call me and be like, we're not in the religion anymore, you can come back home or something. And it never happened, and it's been a year later now, and it probably won't happen because my dad is very, very set in his ways. But it's okay now. But I let myself go through that, and I feel like for anyone else going through it as well, you do have to let yourself heal in some sort of way, because I tried ignoring it, and it almost made it 100 times worse. It does not work.
Denial is not a healthy way of coping.
No.
Denial is part of the grieving process, and that's what you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Denial and bargaining, anger, depression, and then hopefully acceptance being a part of that grieving process. Acceptance happens when you let go of the hope that things could be different, and you realize that everybody in this situation, particularly, they're giving what they have. This is who they are, and everybody's doing their best. This is what they've got to offer. And if everybody's doing their best, there's not much you can expect beyond that until something or whatever might change. And that's a freeing place to get to, because we're no longer just sitting there pining for this person to come back. Now, I mean, obviously, if I heard from any of my family, that would be really cool. I'd love to hear from my brother, my sister, my mom, but when you can, but I have no hope that things would be any different, because this is who they are today. If they change, cool. If they don't, that's where I have to kind of set my expectations, because that expectation is then set in the reality of who they are today. They're Jehovah's Witnesses.
And that's exactly how I am at. If my mom called me and was like, I want to get out or something, or something along that matter, because I know being married in the witness, and if you don't agree, that's a extremely hard situation. That's what I was afraid of. That's honestly why I left so early. I was like, I do not want to get married in this, because then I have another person and I'm legally attached to. But if that ever happened, I would be right there for her. But until then, I'm going to focus on myself.
Well, sure. At the end of the day, again, your mom is an adult. She's not trapped. Nobody's got a gun to her head.
Yeah.
And she's making her decisions too.
Yeah.
Maybe some of it is to blame on your dad. I'm sure he's pressuring her into something, but again, she's sitting there going right along with it, and she's doing things. So she's culpable in her own ways, and everybody in this situation is giving what they have. This is what your mom has to give, and your dad at the same time is giving what he has to give, right?
Nothing. Oh my goodness.
And it's a shame, right? These are. I mean, again, I know I said this pre-interview, but this is why I do not think that Jehovah's Witnesses should ever be allowed to adopt a child. Because I think that, first of all, I think it can be used in this gross, predatory, let's bring kids into the organization way that makes me sick.
That's what I forgot to mention. My mom would always say that Jehovah brought you into the organization for a reason. Like, he put you into that specific foster home for a reason.
So Jehovah wrecked this woman and her boyfriend's life.
Yeah.
And did all that just so you could be here today.
Yeah,
Isn't that loving? What a nice thing.
something special about me, I guess. So
see, they use that stuff in a predatory way. Oh, I hate that so much.
It was very
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was very like, oh well, he chose me, so now I have to do everything for him. Like that's how I thought about it. You know, you have to give yourself because he chose you. And you know, they kind of say that a lot, you know, oh, like God specifically chose you to be a witness or whatever.
Yeah, we were God's chosen people. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was even more so because I was literally chosen by a family. So it was a lot more.
It hits different when you add that extra layer of manipulation to it.
Yeah.
My goodness. I'm so sorry. Gosh. Oh, the absurdity of what they do. It's just, but it also the pain that it causes and the sadness. And I'm so sorry. You again, you know, the adults in your life have failed you in many ways, and you deserved better.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to focus on becoming a better adult. You know, I'm only 19. I'm barely there, but I'm so proud of myself for how far I've come.
You should be.
Me and my boyfriend are living together. We have our own apartment, and you know, I have a great job. I have a great job opportunity coming up now. I want to go to college eventually. You know, I don't have the money for it, but I want to, you know, get a good job and go to college, get an education, and I just want to do things that I always dreamed of. And college, for some reason, was always one of them. It was always one of those. Was like, I kind of want that college experience, like just like how I was in middle school. I want a locker. Like I want that college experience. So,
did you know that I put out an episode about how to go to college?
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, so I interviewed a bunch of ex-JWs witnesses and got their experiences. I also talked with someone who's very educated herself, a former Jehovah's Witness, and a person that has worked with colleges to help them, you know, in this process, or worked with students to help them get into college. And there was many different, you know what, I'll link it in the show notes.
Okay.
For this, for anyone who is, write that down, who is listening and, you know, would like to find that episode. I mean, it's somewhere after episode 100 and we're in like the 130s now, so you can find it yourself, I'm sure, but I'll link that in the show notes. But I would highly recommend listening to that because it's kind of inspirational as to how other people who have been in the same situation, who had that dream, did get to go, and some of the different avenues you can use to maybe get into college in a non-traditional way. Yeah,
no, I definitely, I gotta listen to that episode though, because that is definitely one of my goals. Because I graduated at 15. I was homeschooled, and you can, you know, go ahead. You're doing it all by yourself online. So I had to literally teach myself high school, and I was able to do it in 2 years instead of 4. So I love studying, and I love, you know, schoolwork. So was always like I don't know, it was almost fun for me. And, you know, I see people in college and they're like, I hate it. And I was like, I wish I was in your, you know, position, you know, so.
Well, sure. And sometimes you have to survive before you can thrive. Sometimes you've got to get the basics down, and, you know, you're just a short distance away from this thing, right, that was so big in your life. And, you know, it's kind of been a whirlwind, it sounds like, for you to some degree as you've been going through this. Can I ask, is there anything that, so I know you mentioned the ex-JW Reddit was a place that you found some solidarity or comfort. Was there anything else that you found that helped you in your path out?
So I feel like the ex-JW Reddit just led me down a wormhole, because it was just like all of the things. So it was like the Australian whole thing with, you know, the child sex abuse and stuff like that. That was like a whole thing that I had no idea about. And then it was just reading other stories of how people were treated, and inconsistencies in, you know, the Bible in itself. And like I said, I actually studied the Bible, so, and I was like, huh, that's makes sense, you know. And it's just, there was a lot. And I I I'm gonna say that I left before, like, I really did the research.
Sure, a lot of
So
people do.
there wasn't really much, like, I did see the, you know, ex-JW Reddit. It wasn't until I left that I was like, oh my goodness, good thing I did that, because there is a lot more to be uncovered. So I'm still very active on there. I was, you know, I'm loving the whole Norway thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And if they could bring that to the United States, that would be great. um, but yeah, I'm still very active on there. I actually met someone who was also ex-JW on that Reddit forum, who I met him in the store one time, and then we ended up, you know, connecting on Reddit, and we're like, wait, don't you work here? And then I was like, yeah. And I was like, I just came in the other day. I was like, you're an ex-JW too? It was just, and so we're friends as well.
That's
so
cool.
It was, yeah, it's just that I feel like the Reddit has been a very big part of it. I know there's like JW Facts or something like that, and that also told you how to, like, there's like a whole thing on like how to make a plan on moving out, and I use that a lot to help me to prepare myself almost. I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. I knew what was going to happen. So like before I left, like I would just hold my cats like really tightly, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to see them. And you know, out of all of the things that I've talked about, like my cats make me cry because I love those cats so much.
That's heartbreaking in its own right.
Yeah.
Obviously, I guess not to the cats, but to the people who, I don't mean it's not heartbreaking to the cats.
Yeah.
Where I'm going is that, you know, one of the questions I like to ask people is there anything that you would say, if you could, to those that you can't speak to anymore, or those that shun you? Is there anything that you would say to the people that were once in your life, you know, whether it's specific to your parents or the congregation or other friends or whatever? Any words?
Yeah, I did write something down. I'm just trying to find it, because okay. Okay. So I would say that I love them, and that I really, really tried to go along with it. And I said this before. I gave it a lot of chances, and I I physically could not do it anymore. And I knew what I was losing, but I wouldn't have done it if I didn't feel like there was no other option. So, and I don't want to I'm not putting any blame on my family whatsoever. It's the organization that they're in, and they are in themselves broken people that needed something to hold on to, needed something to look forward to, something to focus on. And that's what the organization is to them. It's literally the only thing that they have going for them. And that's really sad, because you can have so much going for you that is not that. And that's what I'm trying to figure out for myself. What do I have going for me that's not the religion? So
Good for you. I mean, that's part of finding your own identity, and that's something that everybody has to work on when they leave. Any other words, or was that?
That was mostly it. I'm gonna be very surprised if my mom ever sees this. If I get a text message when this comes out, it'll be very interesting. But
Like, who's that bald-headed jerk?
Yeah, like how's she know this? Do this. So that would be interesting. But you know, I also want to speak to those that are in the situation that I am, because I was that person, you know, hiding under my blanket watching, you know, like these videos in my house, and like trying to just build the courage to finally step up. And I can't remember the exact video of it, but it was of a younger girl also who was out, like trying to get out as well. And it was just herself. She was just documenting, you know, trying to get out of religion. And that's what gave me the strength to do that. So I hope to be that for someone else.
Well,
you
sure.
know, just
heck, I just had a 14-year-old kid reach out the other day who's awake and is like, you know, what do I do? I'm 14, right? And it's, well, that's a tough path. You're gonna have to play the game until you can get out and make a plan.
Exactly what I did.
You know, it's really tough. And here you are, you did it.
Yeah. So and that's what, because I was at the same age. I was 15, just right after I got baptized, and I was just like, what did I just do? And it's that what I do recommend is, if you are not baptized, do not get baptized. Do not make that decision, because it makes it 10 times harder. But yeah, you do have to play the game. I recommend making your life as easy as possible, you know, until you have to, because it's going to get a lot harder. And so if that's what I did, I just made my life very easy. I went along with everything. I did not fight, you know, and that's what they want. They want someone to go along with everything and not fight. So give them what they want for a little bit. And, you know, once you get that freedom, once you turn that age, then you can, you know, drop the bomb on them like I did. So
well, certainly, yeah, there's a lot of ways to address that, but it's, you know, it's good to see that there's so many different ways that it can be done and it can be successful. And again, you know, you've gone from 10 hours to get a duffel bag and out on your butt in a car to now you have your own place and you have a job, and you can even talk about things like potential college someday and such. So, you know, you've really done a lot for yourself, and you should be proud of that, because you truly have done it for yourself. Not to discount the help of these wonderful, loving human beings around you, but you know, it's certainly not like your parents helped you. You know, you are doing this thing, and that speaks, you know, well of you. Not to say that those who struggle, it speaks poorly of them, because well, we were given that struggle. We didn't come up with it on our own, and we all are impacted differently.
Honestly, most of the reason why I stuck out for so long was because I am so stubborn, and if I am adamant about something, like when I left, I was like, I am not coming back. Like, I don't care how bad it gets, I am not coming back to this situation, because I fought so hard to get out of it. And that was the one thing that I promised myself. I was like, I'll find something else, but I'm just not going back to it. So
yeah, instead of stubborn, I might call that self-love, or
I guess so. Definitely.
I mean, yeah, that's not just being stubborn for stubborn's sake. That's loving yourself well and saying, I'm not going to sell myself out to these people again. And good for you.
I also wanted to say, I saw one of your things, like if you had like a song that you like resonated with.
Oh yeah, so I have a playlist that I put people, if there's a song that was representative of your journey that you'd like me to include, I'd be happy to do that.
So let me find it real quick. It's called God Must Hate Me by Katie Turner.
Okay.
And what the song is about is all of her flaws that she's talking about. So like part of the, like, you know, bridge is just like, you know, with all of these flaws, God must have hated me so much to give them to me, because he was, and there's nothing that I can do about it. So I'm going to blame him, because it's easier than to blame it on myself. And that's kind of what I felt like. I felt like I was put in a situation, even though even from a young age, I didn't believe in it, you know, and like I was set up for failure. And that song, it's a very sad song. It's not a happy song whatsoever.
Okay.
But
emblematic of your journey.
Yeah, it definitely helped me get through a lot of tough times. It really did.
Well,
So
I will
that
definitely
was another
include it for
song.
you.
Yeah.
So I, just in case you don't see it immediately, I batch the updates to that. So if you go to Spotify, there's a playlist called Shunned Podcast, not talking about the actual podcast, which is on Spotify as well, but there's a musical playlist called Shunned Podcast, and it has all the songs chosen by people who've been on the podcast. These are songs chosen by people who have been through this, and some of these songs resonated with people, and it's good to have, we can find catharsis sometimes even in the songs that other people really felt too, because their journey was similar and maybe they just found a different expression of that. And it's a really beautiful and interesting musical adventure to go down sometimes. So.
Yeah. Also, and I do have a second song, but Faith by The Weeknd. I don't know if you know that there's a specific part of it. And the first day that I got kicked out, I blasted that song because part of it is, he says, "I've lost my faith. I'm losing my religion every day." And that was just part of like, I was like, oh, that's very fitting right now. And it just so happened to turn on in my car while I was driving away. And that was just another song. That's a little more upbeat if you're not looking to cry. So for anyone watching, it's a little happier of a song.
Okay. So I guess, where you are today, what do you enjoy about your life today? And is there anything that I know you mentioned college. Is there anything that you do aspire? You said there was things you never got to do that you'd like to. Maybe there's some things there that you'd like to follow.
I really want to be a tattoo artist. I have multiple tattoos on me. My first one was a meaning. It's a barbed wire with hearts around it to represent the restricted childhood, but there was still love in that, childhood. So I put the hearts with it as well. The rest were tattoos that I just wanted because they look cool. So I definitely want to be a tattoo artist. I'm very artistic and I love drawing and painting. So anything artistic I want to do. But right now I'm a graphic designer for a construction equipment company, and I love that job. But I'm probably going to take another job working at the college that I would love to go to as a marketing coordinator. So I'd be like coordinating all of their events and stuff like that. So I've been able to get places without college, but I want that experience. I really do.
Well, sure. Go get it.
But it's just every day just being thankful for, how far I've come, and the fact that I do have an apartment, and that I adopted another cat. I got my own cat again. I still always love my cats, but I'm just very proud of how far I've come, and I'm still with my boyfriend. I thought my parents really thought that wasn't going to last, but we've been together for 1 year and 6 months now. So it's really nice. But my brother, that we were, split into two different, I got in touch with him, because he wasn't a witness. So my parents really didn't, enforce that relationship much because they didn't really know who he was, and he wasn't a witness. So they didn't like really stop me from talking to him, but if I was talking to him, I had to like preach to him at the same time. So it was weird.
So when did you reconnect with him, or did you always kind of have a little connection to him?
I had a little bit. Like when I was younger, like we got each other's number, we would text here and there, but then my mom would go through every message to make sure he's not saying anything to influence me. He wasn't. But then it wasn't until I left, I called my brother and I was like, yeah, I got kicked out of my house. And he's like, what? And then I told him finally, and he's like, you know what, that makes so much sense, because he's like, I felt like you were ignoring me for so long and I didn't know why. And I was like, that was why I felt like I couldn't really have a connection with him. And he just came down a couple months ago. He lives in North Carolina still. So he came down to Florida. He got to meet my boyfriend. He got to, see my apartment and everything. And it was like no time has passed, it's really nice. So, but yeah, I'm ready to grow up, and, that past was my childhood, which is my, very big part of my life, but now I have the rest of my life to live the way that I want to. And I'm glad that I did it early. I really am, because like my aunt, she was like, I did not have the courage at 18 to leave. And she's like, the fact that you did is very amazing, because it's very hard. So
yeah, you got your whole life ahead of you, and you've got a fresh start on it. And you've got some people in your life today that care about you, and you've seen how even strangers can care about you, and then you can create meaningful relationships with those people as well. I think all of us that are shunned have had to find chosen family, people that we've chosen as we've gone through, and that's a beautiful thing as well. And I'm glad that you've got some people in your life today that you're choosing and that choose you too. I'm sorry that you've had to go through what you've had to go through, but I'm glad that you shared it, because it is going to be, an example for people who have been through similar things, and you're going to help them to see that there is a path out, and that you can be grounded on the other side, even at a young age. That's really impressive, and so I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm very honored to be on this podcast, because it's almost part of a healing for me as well, just to be able to talk about it and stuff like that. It also just, makes me realize how far I've come, talking about everything and going through the phases that I've been through my life. And, in those times, I felt like I was never going to get out of it. But, seeing myself now, it's very nice.
Good. Well, I think we'll end on that note. I think that's a beautiful way to end.